Well, thank you very much, Acting Deputy Speaker, and I'm very pleased to have the opportunity to continue my remarks on this important piece of legislation and this very important area of public policy. And what I want to do in my remarks today, Deputy Speaker, is really bust a few myths in relation to health policy, to talk, of course, about this, the important changes encompassed in the private health insurance bill, and also to talk about the financial situation that the government confronts, not only in health policy but in policy more generally, because of the extreme waste of the previous government. Broadly, Deputy Speaker, the government inherited, as you know, a fiscal mess, high levels of debt growing very rapidly. It's incumbent upon the government to address that debt and deficit situation, which we are doing in a sensible and purposeful fashion, right across the board in government spending, and indeed, Deputy Speaker, returning the budget to a near balance within 4 years, and importantly, Deputy Speaker, investing in areas that require public investment, such as in health, in a substantial way. So, delivering, getting the budget back on track, back to a near surplus situation, whilst at the same time, investing in health and in other areas. So, let's go to some of the numbers, Deputy Speaker, just to really demonstrate the gravity of the fiscal situation that we confront. Now, when Labor came into office, of course, $50 billion in the bank, no debt at all, no interest payments, because you don't pay interest when you don't have any debt. And what we saw over the 6 sorry years of administration of Labor was a consistent overspend. Consistent overspend, Deputy Speaker. So deficits 27 billion, 55 billion, 48 billion, 43 billion, 19 billion, and then of course culminating in $50 billion in 2013-14, based on the previous budget. So just a very consistent level of high levels of debt. And now you'll recall, Deputy Speaker, that one of the excuses that was given for this financial mismanagement was that revenue had collapsed, that there was this thing called the GFC, which of course is a very convenient excuse for the previous government, was pretty much trotted out in virtually all situations, but it was certainly trotted out as a reason why it was unavoidable that these huge deficits be run on a continuing basis. But the problem with that, Deputy Speaker, is government revenue under Labor actually rose very strongly. So if you go back to 2008-9, so the first full year of the previous government, $289 billion of government receipts, and then in 13-14, the last year in which they were in government, $361 billion. 361 billion in 13-14, 348 in FY13. So over that 6-year period, Deputy Speaker, government revenue rose by 25%, and in fact averaged an increase of 4.5% every year. The compound annual growth rate, as it's called, 4.5%. So government revenue didn't, in fact, with the exception of 2009-10, where it did pause momentarily, didn't go down at all. It actually went up very substantially. It went up in 2010-11 by 6%, in 2011-12 by 10%, 2012-13 by another 6%. Very substantial increases, Deputy Speaker. So really, no excuse for not being able to make the expenditure match the revenue. But of course, that is what happened. And as a consequence, we have a very big debt and something that we must address. Now, this government, therefore, has to take a different approach. We can't just sort of sleepwalk into the future and pretend everything's okay and go on running up deficits of tens of billions of dollars every year. We won't do that. And so what we have laid out in a methodical and detailed fashion, Deputy Speaker, is a plan that gets the budget back on track, and a plan which means that by 2017-18 there is a deficit of just $3 billion. So next to nothing in the context of a $460 billion organisation, Deputy Speaker. And we've done that by making sensible changes to government expenditure right across the board. And obviously there have been changes in areas such as foreign aid, where we've quarantined some of those large increases that were planned, and various others. And one of the areas, Deputy Speaker, and obviously the principal focus of the discussion today that we need to talk about is health. And so, as I say, the government has provided for a situation in which the budget gets back under control and gets back broadly to a surplus. But at the same time, Deputy Speaker, the government has provided for significant increased investment in health. So it is absolutely not the case, Deputy Speaker, that government expenditure in health is declining. In fact, it is increasing quite substantially. So $64 billion in health in 2013-14, and going up to $79 billion in 2017-18. And that works out at an average increase in health expenditure over the next 4 years of about 5%. So about 5%. So it's a very important point, Deputy Speaker. So health investment not going down, going up, and going up at a very solid rate. Now, of course, there are a number of different areas in which government invests in healthcare, Deputy Speaker, but the three biggest, of course, are Medicare and dental services, sometimes treated apart, but for the purposes of this, probably easier to treat them together. There's, of course, assistance to the states for hospitals. And then there is the PBS, Pharmaceutical Benefit Scheme, which, of course, provides subsidised drugs to Australians. So let's have a look at what this government is doing in terms of investment in these areas. Now, bearing in mind, of course, that this is in the context of getting the budget back under control. So we know that government spending is moderating because we know we're not going to be running massive deficits. We'll actually be getting the budget under control. But whilst we're doing that, we will continue to invest very solidly in important health services. So take a look at Medicare services and dental, Deputy Speaker. So 2013-14 total expenditure just over $19 billion. Just over $19 billion. 2017-18 forecast total expenditure is just over $23 billion. Just over $23 billion. So that's a growth of about 21%, or annualised close to 5%. So just to be very clear, Deputy Speaker, expenditure by this government in Medicare and related dental services is forecast over the next 4 years to increase by more than 20%. Now, that's not going down, Deputy Speaker, that's going up by 20%, and that's a very important point to note. We look at assistance to the states for hospitals, Deputy Speaker. Now, of course, you may well have heard stories of supposed cuts to spending by the Commonwealth in hospitals. Absolutely false, Deputy Speaker. So $13.8 billion in FY14, $13.8 billion in FY14, and forecast to rise to $18.9 billion in FY18. And that's an increase, Deputy Speaker, of 37%, or about 8% on an annualised basis. So again, it is absolutely flat-out false to suggest that Commonwealth spending in hospitals is declining. It is not declining, it is increasing substantially. And, Deputy Speaker, this government is spending significantly more in public hospitals than the previous government ever did. It's an important point, Deputy Speaker. This government is spending considerably more in assistance to public hospitals than the previous government ever did. That's right. Going up very substantially, in fact by 37% over 4 years. The member for Aston is commenting on that very substantial increase, and it is, Deputy Speaker, 37% more than the Labor Party ever spent on assistance to public hospitals by this government. Now, that doesn't seem to be consistent with the narrative of those opposite, Deputy Speaker, but it is it has the tremendous virtue, Deputy Speaker, of being true. 37% increase in investment in public hospitals. And then we look at investment in the PBS, Deputy Speaker. So sensible changes to the PBS, but nonetheless government expenditure on the PBS increasing by 10% over the next 4 years, an average growth rate of about 2.5%. And right across the entire health portfolio, Deputy Speaker, we see incremental money coming in for the Medical Research Fund going up to $4 billion by 2017-18, and a total annual increase in health expenditure of just over 5% per year. So that's not 5% going down, that's 5% going up. But importantly, whilst there is an increase, it is an increase which is being managed in the context of a sensible budget, Deputy Speaker, under which we say goodbye to the years of rampant, uncontrolled spending, and we say, how do we, as a government, sensibly plan to get back on track for a surplus, whilst at the same time investing as required in important areas such as health. So it's very important that that narrative is understood, Deputy Speaker. We see investment in Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander health increasing over the next 4 years. We see investment in the subsidies to private health insurance going up in the next 4 years. And these figures, Deputy Speaker, I'm quoting directly from the budget, so that the member for Shortland she has a different interpretation on numbers which are factual, but a very significant increase in health expenditure, Deputy Speaker. And the changes in this bill, Deputy Speaker, are a part of that sensible approach to health expenditure. So the freezing of the indexation in relation to the private health insurance rebate and related matters will assist in addressing some of those broader budget challenges, but whilst at the same time being part of an overall approach to the health area of government policy, where health expenditure continues to increase, going up, not down, on an annual basis every year. And that is a very important point to note, Deputy Speaker. What we can't do as a government, and will never do, is go into that intellectually dishonest and lazy place of putting out press releases, saying there are going to be surpluses, not doing the hard work to actually make them happen. That's not what this government's about. We're about sensible, methodical planning, and a part of that is sensible planning which enables continuing investment in health services.